Welcome back to another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. Today, I'm joined by a guest. He goes by Mike NoGoZones. And Mike is an interesting guy. He basically spends his time traveling through the Middle East, Kabul, the craziest places on the planet, basically documenting what it's like on the ground. Mike's coming to us live right now from Miami. How's it going, man?
It's going very good. Thanks you for having me on. I'm a big fan of your website. So I've been following it for years. I love the city guides, especially how you have everything formatted and laid out. It's very user
Yeah.
friendly.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know you were a fan of the website. How long have you been aware of My Latin Life?
I'd say probably about close to 2 years. No, actually a little longer because it must have been 2 years before the pandemic hit and kind of travel kind of stopped for a while. So I
Hmm.
was reading your Colombia guides because I remember I was going to Colombia quite often
Hmm.
before I started my own series on YouTube. I would use it as a guide to see, like, maybe what's a cool city to hit up.
Yeah, exactly. And for anyone listening that's not familiar, My Latin Life is first and foremost a website. That's what's been around since 2014. And we're very famous or infamous for our city guides. So,
Mhm.
for I'd say 100 plus cities in Latin America, we have city by city guides. In Colombia, it's Medellin, Cartagena, Bogota,
Right.
etc. And what to do, where to stay, what's the nightlife like, recommendations on where to go. How adapted is it for digital nomads and travelers? And so so go check out the website for city guides. So that's awesome that you've been familiar with the website and put it to use a little bit, maybe used it to inspire you and where to go and possible destinations.
Absolutely. This is before I started my series. Um, like I told you earlier, I mean, hopefully with the coming year and in the future, I will be filming in Colombia, Peru, Brazil. It's There's a lot of so-called no-go zones in those countries. Like, not to put it down, but every city in Latin America has its good area and its
Hmm.
rough part of town. And what I do is I explore the rough part of town and go where we're not supposed to go to. And you do find, just because a neighborhood has a bad reputation, you do find a lot of culture going on there, and whether it's in music, art, expression.
Hmm.
And instead of like going to, let's say, to Medellin and going to El Poblado and hitting up the local Hooters, which is fine, but you're not immersing yourself into the local culture by doing that.
Yep. And so you're better off going to Comune Trece or
Yeah,
probably even some lesser known ones. And
right.
there are some YouTubers out there. I don't know who you were inspired by, um, and we'll get back to give like a more formal background. But who were you inspired by in terms of I always love these guys that they just be like, all right, let's head to the ghetto and see if we can get someone to invite us into their house for tea.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I got to give a shout out to the godfather of unconventional travel, and that would be the late Anthony Bourdain.
Mm,
His show was groundbreaking because this is back when the Travel Channel actually used to put travel shows back in the day. Now it's all paranormal stuff, but he was the first major tour guide because back then, whether it's Rick Steve or Samantha Brown, not to knock what they're doing, they do a good job, but they would go to all the
hmm.
tourist user friendly places. Like they go
Hmm.
to here's a gondola ride in Venice, or here's the
Right.
Colosseum of Rome. Great stuff, but it's been done a million times, and everyone has seen it. Whereas Anthony Bourdain would go to the Congo, he went to the slums of Brazil. He was in Rio de Janeiro, and he actually went
Hmm.
into the favelas and would eat there, talk to the people. And when he passed, I was like, wow. Now that we lost him, who's gonna pick up the mantle and keep it going? Now, I'm not comparing myself to him in any way. He's accomplished way more than most people could. But I was like, between his passing and the way media totally sells us a narrative on certain places like Syria, for
Hmm.
example. I was there and I filmed an episode there. If you believe what mainstream media tells you, it's a country full of jihadists, beheadings, and people that hate us. And what I found there was the total opposite. And that's kind of just what really got me to is like, you know what? Someone needs to show the other side of life. Someone needs to show what's going on in these so-called no-go zones. So I figured, you know what? Why not grab my camera and just start recording my experiences? And it's been going well so far.
So when did Mike NoGoZones come about as a brand and as partaking in these missions?
2019 in the summer. I figured, well, let me start. I live in Miami.
Hmm.
And of course, Miami, what do you think of Miami? You think of the South Beach, Brickell, you think of the glam, the very glam lifestyle, the champagne, the clubs, the
Hmm.
velvet rope. That's what we see in the media. But there's another side to Miami that no one covers, and that's the bad areas of Miami. And there's a area of Miami called Opalaca, which is very industrial, kind of run down, and it's considered not safe for tourists. And I figured, well, no one goes here. Let me check this neighborhood out. And that was my very first episode. I figured, let me just go into my backyard. And
Hmm.
that's how the series was born. It was actually born in a craft brewery there. There's a little place called Legacy Caribbean Brewery in the middle of like this forlorn industrial area of Opalaca. And this guy opened up a craft brewery there. And, craft brewery is kind of known for being in trendy areas, especially in Miami. And
Uh-huh.
I asked him when I walked in there, I go, what made you open up this brewery here? And he goes, well, every time someone in Opalaca wants to do something fun or something nice, we have to get in our car and drive for 30 minutes to go to the nicer parts of Miami. And he goes, why can't we have something nice? Why can't we have something nice here? And it really dawned on me, like, wow, I never looked at it that way. And I'm like, yeah, why not? So you can say like the genesis for the idea to start filming these areas kind of dawned on me right there. So that's how I was born. And then I did more cities. I did the Bronx in New York. I did South Side of Chicago. And then I started branching out, going to other countries such as Syria, Lebanon, Afghanistan,
Hmm.
Iraq.
Yeah, so you did some good spots in the U.S., Baltimore as well,
Yeah.
and then I guess you sort of went straight to the Middle East. Is this a region, the Middle East, that you've been enamored with for a number of years, that you've had experience with in the past, or were these sort of like your first times visiting these countries?
I was only in the Middle East once before I started the series. I was in the country of Jordan,
Hmm.
and Jordan is a very stable country for that region. It's got the ruins of Petra, and it's kind of user friendly. Everybody speaks English. And I just figured what got me to go to Syria for my first international episode was I came across a travel series called Traveling the Unknown.
Okay.
And I saw he was showing Syria, and I'm like, wow. And he goes, I saw how nice it was. And I'm like, wow, how's this possible? I don't believe Syria has anything to show me. But I actually wrote to him, and he started to watch my show. And I started to watch his series. And he goes, hey, I'm organizing a trip to Syria. Why don't you come along? I think it'd be a great way to get your feet wet here. And lo and behold, what happens is also when you go to a place like Syria, you make contacts with other people. Like, oh, so you're
Right.
here, you should check this place out. So of course you meet people that way, and then little by little, I've been going through the Middle East. It's a fascinating region to me because it's where history was born, and what we see in the media is very different from what you experience firsthand. Because every time you turn on the news, it's you see the guys chanting the "Death to America," jihadists running around, and when you get there, it's a totally different story. People are kind, very respectful. They ask you
Hmm.
where you're from. I never once hid the fact that I'm American either. I'm always telling them I'm from the States and be like, thank you for coming. Thank you for, and then we see me with my camera, like,
You're
thank you
not
for
shy
showing
about
us.
it. You say I'm American.
I've never lied yet.
Okay.
And I don't plan
You're
on.
not like I'm from Peru.
No. Yeah, I mean, I could say that, but no, I just say, you know what? If accept me for what I am. So far, nothing
And
has happened yet. You know.
and just for a little bit more background, so you grew up in the New York area,
Yes,
and you're, I guess, of at least part Latino background.
I am. I am.
Um, what what was it like growing up in sort of a multicultural environment in New York, and how has it sort of shaped you today?
Well, that's a good question. My father's from Italy, by the way. So
Hmm.
I had an Italian father, a Peruvian mother, born in the United States, and it was good. It gave me a love of travel. That's one thing. Because ever since I was a child, we had to go to Peru to visit family, and then once in a while, we had to go to Italy to visit that side of the family. So
Hmm.
from a very young age, I had a big love of traveling, and also different languages because we spoke Spanish in the house. My
Hmm.
Italian is kind of weak, but I can get by. So right from a young age, I was learning a new language, and I guess it made me appreciate to look beyond the borders of our country. That there's another world out there, and it's a lesson I'm very grateful for my parents to show me that it's a pretty diverse world out there, and it's not just the suburbs of New York where I grew up. Town that's called Farmingdale, by the way. It's a very you know middle class area. Not a whole lot going on. Very homogenous. At least it was back when I was growing up there. So yeah, I guess you can say I really, from a young age, already was broadening my horizons.
Yeah, it makes sense. I
Yeah.
mean, uh, I guess a little bit about myself. I'm from Toronto, Canada,
Mm.
one of the most diverse cities in the
Right.
world. More than 50% of the people in the city were born outside of Canada. We have people
Amazing.
from literally every country on the planet. For a lot of countries, the largest diaspora group is in Toronto or in Canada, whether that
Mm.
be like Eritreans or Jamaicans
Wow.
or like
Yeah.
a million things, right? Um, so I grew up around a lot of diversity,
Mm.
but grew up in pretty much like a normal, like white kind
Right.
of like Irish Italian household. You know what I
Same
mean?
here.
And so I was always fascinated by this stuff, and I just felt like I needed to learn more about the world because it was sort of like at my doorstep, but it wasn't. And I was always fascinated by languages because it just seemed like a superpower. So I guess you fell into Spanish a little bit more naturally. How's things been going? I guess learning Arabic for some of these trips.
uh, Not good. My Arabic is horrendous. I probably can say 10 words in Arabic.
Hmm.
Hello, goodbye, marhaba, and all that. I can say shukran, thank you, things like
Hmm.
that. But it's a regret. I really should take a class one of these days because it's. Luckily, most people in the hospitality industry do speak English, but it's something I really need to get work improve on. And
Hmm.
shame on me for that. Shame on me.
Yeah, I think people who aren't maybe familiar with some of the history of Spain and the Arab conquest and everything would be surprised to know that actually in Spanish
Hmm.
there's a lot of Arabic words. There are
Yes,
thousands of Arabic
literally,
words in Spanish, literally.
absolutely.
Whether it be like almohada, which is like a pillow, anything with like
Yep,
algebra,
yep.
um, things like
Aceituna,
that. So
olives. Yeah, azúcar.
aceituna,
Yeah,
aceite,
yeah,
azúcar,
yeah.
which is sugar. So a lot of words actually that have even made its way to the English language originally come
Hmm.
from Arabic.
Absolutely.
Um, so as a Spanish speaker, you get a little bit of a head start with Arabic, and
Yeah,
it's
it
also
sounds
just kind of
technique.
cool.
It is,
It's
but it's the script. It's reading it. That's the tough part because whenever you're dealing with different alphabet, it's a game changer.
It's true, but at least Arabic is an alphabet with 26, 28,
Yeah.
whatever letters. And so it's a letter based alphabet, which makes it at least a little bit more familiar than, say, Chinese or something that's
Oh God,
character
yeah,
based. So
yeah.
at very least, it's an alphabet.
True.
And, so it sort of follows that same structure. I actually do a little bit of Arabic on Duolingo. I've gotten some streaks going, and um,
Nice. Well
so I
done.
do a little bit, but I've never been over there. So you went to Syria. Damascus is obviously a city with an enormous history,
Absolutely.
in a place that's been had an enormous impact on actually human history and the development of civilization. How much of it for you is that you're a student of history and you're looking to see these historic sites and stuff? Um, or is it more just about sort of like the people and the current movement and what's going on now?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, amazing. Like you'll see one thing about Syria that also the mainstream media doesn't show is it's very diverse. It's there's like you have the Sunnis, you have the Shias there, you have the Alawites, which is a different branch.
Hmm.
Druze, you have like five different sects of Christianity there.
Hmm.
And one thing that surprised me was the amount of churches that I saw there
Hmm.
active. And I'm like, wow, how come CNN never shows this? They kind of just push that to the side. Um, any student of history should go there because that's where the first alphabet was created. The first musical notes were recorded there. So there's a lot to see there. And whether you're like one of my favorite time periods to in history was the Crusades.
Hmm.
And when I saw an actual Crusader castle, I was like, wow, it was like that movie Kingdom of Heaven coming to life. So that stuff like that, I really appreciate. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Wait, which
And
movie?
Kingdom of Heaven,
Kingdom of Heaven.
yeah,
I like
or
these like heroic, like Braveheart
yeah,
type
it's
movies.
it's one
So
of those Ridley Scott movies like Gladiator.
yeah, exactly. That's the best stuff.
Exactly. That's oh, if you like that, yeah, it's right up your alley.
Okay, Kingdom of Heaven.
Kingdom of Heaven.
Okay, okay, rings a bell a bit. Okay, they go to Jerusalem, etc. Oh, it is Ridley Scott.
Yeah.
Literally
Yep. Yep.
dope. Okay, and then so what was the game plan? Or and I guess more than just like from a high level in terms of all your no go zone travel, do you have
Mhm.
sort of like a theme or a sort of like guiding philosophy, or are you like engaging in a particular activity? Like for Bourdain, like he used food as sort of like
Right.
a medium of communication. Other people might use maybe archaeology as a medium
Mhm.
of communication, and they go to these places because they love to travel, but they'll use the excuse of like digging up bones or something.
Right. No, I hear you.
Do you have like sort of was there something was there like a consistent theme between all the destinations that you've been to?
Well, food and local drink I do feature in every episode. I'm like, hey, this is what I drank, this is what I ate. But mostly it's to dispel what mainstream media has been selling you.
Hmm.
Like, for example, when I went to Damascus and we actually did like a pub crawl, which you don't think, no one thinks of nightlife in Damascus. Very few people do, but there's actually a lively scene there. And I try to
In
highlight things.
2019.
Yeah. Actually, I was there in 2020, January 2020, I was there.
Unreal.
Yeah. And
Sounds like a Mark Zolo thing.
yeah, speaking of which, mutual friend of ours. And actually, if you see the Syria episode, I put a very tiny little clips of one of the nightclubs we hit up, and it was fun. It was because you don't think of Syria, you don't think of wine, you don't think of beer, but it's there. And
D- uh-huh.
the government is actually secular, so you're allowed to drink.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's got a lively. Damascus has a lively bar scene, and
I don't know if I mentioned this in the recording or just in the pre-conversation. I need more coffee, but the way I originally first heard about you was through Mark Zolo. So
okay,
I've
shout
always
out.
been a big fan of Mark Zolo. I've always been a big fan of these sort of adventure travelers,
Mhm.
whether it be Jim Rogers, the investor, or Sir Richard Burton, who was the
Mhm.
first European to go to Mecca in the
Yeah.
1800s.
Mhm.
So across all sort of like generations and stuff, I've just always been fascinated by these sort of like heroic travelers. And so I love Mark Zolo. He was one of the early guests on the podcast, and I had seen that you guys collaborated in the past. So I had known about you for a little bit now, and I do find it fascinating because I really think you're literally like doing God's work because I mean there are these places that are no-go zones. There are these places that it's high tension, it's dangerous, it's very
Yes.
difficult to get insight into what's actually going on the ground. And it really takes someone like yourself who's willing to brave those dangers. And not only that, but what's the word? Like record
Right.
and document what's going on the ground. And documenting is adds an additional layer of difficulty and danger on top of just being there.
It's true because people do see the camera, and let's be
Hmm.
honest, not everybody likes being filmed. I try to be as polite as possible and tell people, "Hi, I'm going to be recording here." Try to get permission and kind of get their blessing. Is it okay to film here? And I have been turned down in some places, but for 99% of the time, people are like, "Yeah, go ahead, start filming." Oh yeah, and to bring back to the Mark Zolo connection, we were supposed to do Afghanistan together, but he couldn't make it because his visa got denied. I should have joked with him, like maybe they read your book, maybe that's why they denied it. But yeah, so I was stuck in Kabul on my own, and he couldn't make it. It was just not just him; it was him and two other guys, and all their visas got denied. And then what happened was that I'm here on my own. I might as well start recording, and that's what I did. The episode actually came out to be very good, but there is a happy ending to everything. We all got to meet up in Istanbul when everything was finished and done, and we all got to hang out and find like, wow, we made it. So that was a nice way to end everything, and it's featured in the video too. We did hit up a pub, and then we went out at night, and we
Hmm.
went through several bottles of wine, I think, but we had a good time. Had a good time. Istanbul is a cool city.
That's dope. I mean, I haven't met Mr. Zolo in person, but it's definitely on my bucket list to share a couple bottles of wine with him.
Sure, no, yeah, it's the Irish are good storytellers, so yeah, it's definitely yeah.
This is
Hopefully,
true.
I'll cross paths again one day. So
And just to give people an idea, so I mean, how many episodes of No Go Zones have you filmed? And just sort of rattle off some of the names of the cities and countries that you've filmed in.
sure, it's about 13 episodes so far. First one's Miami, Opalaka. So if people want to see a different side of Miami instead of like the beaches and the nightlife, go to see Opalaka. Then New York City, the South Bronx, which has a horrible reputation, but the South Bronx of New York gave the world a lot. Hip hop was born there, whether you like it or
Yep,
not.
the Boogie
It's a
Down.
musical genre that look at it now. Salsa music was born there too. Speaking of
What?
my Latin life, yeah. What happened was that Cuban immigrants brought son, which is like the Cuban folk music, and they went to New York City and they heard jazz for the first time. And they said, "Wow!" With the horn sections and all that, because Cuban music back then was more guitar based,
Hmm.
and they heard all these horn sections of jazz. And I guess some of them were like, "Hey, what would happen if we took our Latin music, add these horns, and boom, salsa music was born." So that's something that the Bronx gave us.
That's crazy. And yeah,
It
that
is.
does actually ring a bell. Like I know I'm not super well versed in the New York Latin music scene, but I know like a lot of the early like Puerto Rican guys and Cuban guys, they were all sort of like cute, like Cuban American, Puerto Rican American, and
Right.
they would like go back and forth, and they would record in New York, and then they'd go back
Hmm.
to the island and record
Yep.
there, and I wouldn't be able to give names, but yeah, that definitely sounds feasible.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not an expert on salsa. By the way, I'm not a good dancer, but it was born in by that mixing of American jazz and the Latin rhythms, and of course, singing in Spanish. And they kind of married, and the child they had is what we know as salsa music today. So the fact that one part of New York gave us two genres of music is it's amazing. To keep
Hmm.
going on, I was in Chicago. I did the South Side of Chicago, which also has a really bad reputation, and people were cool there. And then I went to Baltimore, the West Side of Baltimore, that was probably the roughest place I've ever been to, and I'm including Kabul. I That was the only time I had my life threatened, and it's because it was my fault. I filmed a drug deal by accident. So you can imagine, these guys are doing an illegal transaction on the corner, And by accident, I stumbled upon them and filmed it. And you can say they weren't too pleased. But once I explained to them who I was and what I was doing, they actually like stopped and looked me up on their phone right there, like, oh, okay. And they're like, they kind of let me go. And I had to pixelate that whole scene out. I couldn't put it in the video because I gave them my business cards too. So they all know my name, my number, they have like all my personal information.
All right. So your YouTube channel gave you a hood pass.
Yeah. And then, yeah. Then I went to New Orleans. Again, New Orleans has its. I went to not the French Quarter. I went to the Lower Ninth Ward. That was the neighborhood that got totally devastated in Hurricane Katrina. So I wanted to see how that area was rebounding, and it is. It is rebounding. And then I went to Syria, and then I did Lebanon, and then I went to. Then I stayed back in Miami again. I did Miami Gardens, which is considered like a rough part of Miami. But
Hmm.
the irony about Miami Gardens is that it's our football stadium is there, where the Miami Dolphins play,
Yep.
and beautiful stadium, gorgeous. But it's in the middle of an area that's kind of considered. People strictly drive into the stadium, and as soon as the game is over, boom, they're out of there. They leave. So I said, why not explore the surrounding area? And it turned out to be a good episode too. Then from there, I went to Seattle after the riots there. I don't know if you remember, but there was that summer where they had all these riots in Seattle.
Yeah, 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 yeah. They
Yeah,
the block that like
yeah,
was like
yeah,
sovereign.
yeah. Chaz, I think they called it. Unfortunately, I got there too late because by the time I got there, it was already dismantled. So there really wasn't much to see. And then I went to Afghanistan. Oh, I did Detroit. Detroit too has a bad reputation, but I
Hmm.
found the city. It's definitely rebounding. And then I went to Kabul, and
Hmm.
then I did a little episode in Turkey, Istanbul. But that's kind of a bonus video. It's kind of like East. I tell everyone, listen, this is Istanbul is a great city. Everyone should see it once. And it was like a bonus video, and then I did Iraq. That was the last episode that I did. There you go. That's the whole rundown of every episode.
And in the U.S. episodes, were you just happening to be in the city and said, you know what, I'll film a little episode on the side, or did you really go specifically to do these no-go zone missions?
No, no, I would plan a trip there. Like for
Yeah.
example, to New Orleans, I planned the trip and I would do my research. Okay, while I'm in this part of town, what is there to see? What is there to do? So I actually do a little bit of research before going. I have yet to film an episode on a whim like that.
Hmm.
I like to have a little bit of background, do a little bit of research before jumping on the
And
plane.
even in the U.S., would you try to get like a fixer or someone on the ground that can sort of take you around? Like you go to South Side of Chicago, are you with someone
No, I
or?
was on my own. Totally on my own. The only time I used guides was in like Kabul, Syria, and in Iraq. That's it. That's the only time I actually had like a fixer. You can is the way to put it.
Yeah, I'd say definitely in Middle East, a fixer's a good idea, and they're
Yeah.
relatively easy to come across in
Oh
these
yeah.
Facebook groups. Like there's these like there's one like every travel stamp. Um, there's a couple
Every
of them.
passport stamp. That's one I belong to.
Every passport stamp. There's one counting countries,
Hmm.
and there are these people that other people that are enthusiasts about going
Hmm.
to these difficult to travel countries, and you can write in like, "Hey, I'm looking for a fixture. I'm looking for
Absolutely.
like a chauffeur, basically. Does
Right.
anyone know one?" And then they'll just like send a link to their Facebook friend like that lives in Kabul, and you know
Hmm.
you hit them up and you're on your way. So
Absolutely.
we're doing some of that.
Uh, well, for not here in the states, but the thing is, the trip to Syria and Afghanistan, I kind of yeah, I did use EPS for Kabul, but not for Iraq and Syria because those trips were already prearranged.
Hmm.
So I just took it like that.
Excuse me, just okay. And then so focusing on the Middle East a little bit more, just sort of getting into it in more detail.
Mhm.
Are you really focusing on the capital city where there's maybe a little bit more infrastructure, things are a little bit more familiar, Are you going to more? Are you going to cities? Are you going to like secondary cities? Are you going to small villages? Are you going to historic sites in the middle of nowhere, like some random like Roman bridge, or like how do you think about the places that you want to knock off the list?
Well, in Afghanistan, it was strictly Kabul. I wanted to
Hmm.
leave the city to take a day trip, but my hotel told me the Taliban is active and you might get kidnapped. So I figured, you know what? All right, I'll just chill out in Kabul. But in Syria, we had trips to like Palmyra, which is like
Hmm.
major ancient ruins.
Yep.
I did mention the Crusader Castle. That's called Crac de Chevalier. We took a day trip to there, and we did get explore a lot of the secondary cities in Iraq. Yes, Baghdad was our base, but I did go to Karbala and Najaf, which is two secondary cities outside of Baghdad. And those cities I found very fascinating because they're considered holy cities for the Shia sect of Islam.
Hmm.
So it's definitely unique to see, not being Muslim, but it's kind of like their Vatican in a way. It's
Hmm.
holy temple shrines everywhere, and oh, we couldn't drink there. We couldn't drink alcohol there. No bars in Karbala or Najaf, but I did bring a couple of bottles of arak with me on the trip. Put it in my bag, and
I mean, I guess if Mark Zolo was with you in Afghanistan, you guys would have been smoking a little something.
yeah, we were. The thing was that he had an itinerary planned, but since he couldn't make it, I kind of was on my own, and I had to get a last minute guide. I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure we'd have had some crazy. If there would have been a bar there or some kind of clandestine gathering, I'm sure he would have found it. But in Kabul, yeah, I was kind of on my own. But yeah, I'm sure you're right. He would have found something.
There'd be a little shisha bar, and they'd put a little something
Yeah, a
extra in the
little extra.
shisha.
Yeah, something a little extra. I did try the local shisha, but it was strictly tobacco. Yeah,
Nice. And some
yeah,
I love mint tea. I was in Marseille in October, November,
nice.
which is very like Arab vibes, and I was seeking out these little cafes and getting little pastries and a mint tea. Um, so do you have when you go, do you have any footage that you're really, really trying to get? Do you know what type of footage you're looking for? Or are you reaching out to people like maybe like I don't know, like a little school or hospital or whatever, or particular institutions? Is there any footage that you really need to get, or is it all pretty go with the flow?
Yeah, just go with the flow. I mean, if we do visit a school, great. I'll film it. If not, no big deal. I mean, luckily in the Middle East, it's so historic. Like everywhere you go,
Hmm.
whether it's a church or a mosque or a temple, it's pretty much you can't lift a rock without coming across something historical there.
It's true. How did you find that to be the case in Syria? Like, did you find everything, all the historic stuff was kind of demolished, or was there still a lot even in Damascus?
Damascus was never overrun by the rebels, so it's pretty much intact. But when I went to Palmyra, it was sad. ISIS was there,
Hmm.
and they destroyed a lot of it. Some of it's intact, but when I saw some of the stuff they knocked over, it was heartbreaking. I'm like,
And
wow,
it's
why
not
would?
just knocking over, right? Like they're actually like sort of acquiring these pieces to sell them to like
Yep.
finance their efforts
Hmm.
in antiquities.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm gonna tell you a really sad story. The curator of Palmyra,
Hmm.
he hid the most valuable objects to avoid, because he wanted to save them.
Right.
And they actually had him at gunpoint to tell him where the most precious artifacts were, and he wouldn't say a word, and they beheaded him and put his head on display. I mean, sorry to get so grim about this, but it goes to show how brutal ISIS was. And this guy loved Palmyra so much, he sacrificed his life for it. And I mentioned that in my video, and it's sorry to put a bummer of a story like that, but it really shows you how horrible ISIS was, how brutal.
That's pretty real.
Yeah, stuff like that is when you hear these stories, it like, oh my god, it just really makes you. I'm blessed to be, growing up how I did, and I can't imagine people living through that kind of horror on a daily basis.
Yeah, I'm actually getting more and more interested in antiquities and artifacts.
Mhm.
I'm here in Mexico right now, in the Mayan Riviera, where we there's lots of ruins and everything, and a lot of that stuff has actually made its way to museums
Mhm.
and at Harvard and Yale
Right.
through some of their earlier expeditions, and um, it's interesting. I almost don't know what direction to take the conversation because I'd love to like double down on some of these countries more to get sort of more of like a mental picture of what's going
Mhm.
on. But I feel like there's a lot we could cover. Um, what was your favorite of the Middle Eastern countries? So I guess it would be between Lebanon, Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq,
Yeah.
and I guess
Lebanon.
Jordan,
Yeah,
Lebanon,
Jordan too. Yeah. I didn't film in Jordan. This is before I started the series.
right?
I'd say Lebanon. It's so diverse, and the culture is so rich. And if you're a Westerner, I guess some people don't like it's like, oh, it's too westernized. But I don't know. I just love the history there. I'm into wine, so the wine culture of Lebanon is very strong. And
Hmm.
if you want to go, it has the Beirut before the shutdown, of course, and the blast. Had the best nightlife in that whole area.
Yep.
You guys should go gambling. They have a casino in the middle of the city. If you're single, it's a great place. A lot of pretty girls. It's this.
I think
I know.
Zolo's a big fan too.
Yeah.
Have you thought about going back now that the because of the blast, like to
Yes.
see how things are going on after the blast?
Yes. In fact, the neighborhood I film in is called Mar Michael, which translates to Saint Michael in Beirut. That's the neighborhood that got affected the most. And I would love to see like a before and after. Like, how is it now after the blast? Yeah, it's actually on my itinerary to return there one day and see, is it recovering from the blast or are they not? It's just it's terrible what happened. I mean, that city got a good chunk of it, not all of it, but a good chunk of it got blown to literally like pulverized. Boom.
I actually have a friend, a personal friend, a Canadian guy named who goes by Drouster,
Mhm.
uh, Drowster, Drouster,
Okay.
and he's a photographer, and he does photographs basically in series based on stories. And so he went to India and filmed sort of women at work,
Mhm.
and he went to Lebanon and filmed a series there, and he went to Iraq, filmed a series there. He's spent extensive time in the Middle East on a country by country basis,
Mhm.
focusing really on photographs, largely portraits of like the individuals there, and getting like those unreal shots of like the shoe shine guy on the streets of Kabul,
Right.
and
Right.
things like that. And it's very vibey. I feel like I should put you guys in touch. And so
Sure.
he had spent some time in Lebanon, prior to the blast. He'd done some projects there, and then after the blast happened, he literally flew back like 10 days after the blast. And
Wow.
he's
Oh
like,
man.
I gotta go, I gotta be on the ground, I gotta see what's up. And yeah, I, yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, I definitely want to see how if it's recovering because the currency right there is in collapse. It's becoming like the new Venezuela, Lebanon,
Turkey too.
where yeah, Turkey too. I'm hearing stories of fellow travelers going to Lebanon, going out for a steak dinner, bottle of wine with the currency exchange rate of dollars, $15. $15. I mean, it's insane, and $15 in Miami doesn't get you a sandwich. So you can imagine,
I
having
know
this.
a few. I know a few Cuban places that are pretty cheap.
Yeah, I guess because I live by the Wynwood area, which is like I live in the hipster neighborhood,
Yeah,
so everything's so overpriced.
I'm sure. I mean, if anyone's listening, I mean, if you want a good steak, go to Argentina or Paraguay or Brazil,
Absolutely.
and you will get a very nice steak and wine for $6, $7. Who knows?
Yep.
Very cheap. in Paraguay, they sell steak like on the street. They just have like guys with like barbecues like on the corner, and you can just get a full steak with like a potato on the side for like 250.
That's incredible. Speaking of Paraguay, and this is my Latin life, there is a city there I'm dying to film in. It's called Ciudad del Este.
Yep.
And from what I've never been, but I'm told it's like the Wild West of Latin America. That it's a lot of contraband is flown through there, and there's even rumors that there's some Hezbollah militants hiding out there,
Hmm.
and it just sounds like a fascinating city. That is definitely a potential episode for me. That I would love to go to Ciudad del Este, film there, and see what kind of crazy adventures I come across. Because I can't imagine. It's at the tri. I was on
The
called the
Triple
tri border.
Frontier.
Yeah, yeah. You have Argentina and Brazil right across the border, and
Hmm.
I heard it's just like
Yeah, I was actually there in 2021.
okay,
In like May June 2021. I went to Ciudad del Este. On my personal channel, I actually filmed some stuff, put it up. And you're right. The city, I guess, as a bit of a segue. So, yeah, the city has a huge Arab population. I would
okay,
say over 100,000 Arab speakers
yeah,
are
wow, it's
in that
incredible.
area. So that's a really significant amount. And you'll hear Arabic on the street. And there's all these like shawarma guys on the street, and all the shawarma stands all over town are like actual like dudes from Lebanon and the
Right.
Middle East, like speaking Arabic with their brother, like yelling in the kitchen and all that.
Mhm.
Um, so it's really yeah, it's awesome for food. And yeah, there, and it wasn't a rumor. There actually was like Hezbollah financing going on there.
Yeah.
They've like arrested some guys and stuff like that. You can kind of look it up. There's Wikipedia articles.
Oh, I'm sure.
So there was a little bit of that going on. And you're right. It's actually just a wild west, economically speaking. The border is basically an open area where you can go over the border without your passport from Paraguay to Brazil. You just walk across the bridge and no one's going to stop you.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of trade. Um, People will, buy stuff in Paraguay, bring it back to Brazil, load like an entire Dodge Caravan to the brim full of clothes or makeup or whatever, and then go sell it in Brazil because they can buy it sort of tax free. And yeah, it's just nuts. It's sort of like a super rundown Hong Kong or something, like crazy like rundown buildings with the wires everywhere, a million people on the streets, stands, like just like it's just like a huge open air market basically.
Cool.
And it would definitely work well as a no-go zone and not particularly dangerous at all. You'd have no problem filming there.
Okay, so I think you sold me. I think hopefully this year I'll get a chance to go down to Paraguay. Other
Yeah.
cities, since this is a Latin American website, other cities I definitely want to film in is Bogota
Uh-huh.
and Lima because I have family connections there. We talked about Medellin briefly at the beginning. Comuna 13, I think, would be a
Hmm.
good place. And Cali, I hear, has a has a shady reputation too.
Yep.
Buenaventura, have you been to Buenaventura, Colombia?
I know it is on the Pacific coast. Yeah.
Yeah,
That would be a really good one to
yeah,
film.
because no one goes there. Like the tourists do not go there. They do
Yeah,
not
that
get
shit
in.
is
Like
ghetto.
perfect. Sounds like a future episode.
Yeah, I think there's sort of like two travel paths that you can take almost. You can go to a normal frequented city and then go to the bad parts, or
Yeah,
you can go to somewhere that's just like straight up all bad
right.
or slightly dangerous. So, and you can kind of do a little bit of both. So you have a little bit of like flexibility.
Absolutely. Yeah, I figure because Rio de Janeiro. Yeah, you have the touristy area,
Hmm.
then you have the favelas. Where things can get kind of intense.
Right. Or you could go to like northern Brazil where the whole city is scary.
Yeah, I heard some people say Salvador is very culturally rich,
Uh-huh.
but kind of dangerous.
Yeah.
But I haven't been, so I definitely again I think it would make a great future episode too. Go to Salvador,
Oh, you could get a whole season out of Brazil.
absolutely, or Central America too. Since speaking, San Salvador, I mean, you have the MS-13. active there.
Hmm.
But speaking of El Salvador, one guy who I'm really pulling for is the president there, Naib Bukele. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
He is embracing technology like no other Latin American president has before, with his whole love of crypto and
Yep.
to bring investment like that. I mean, I want to give that guy a round of applause for thinking ahead and for trying to put El Salvador in, in just to move it along and to break away from its painful past and to really lift up because Central America has a lot to offer. Fertile its history. You have nice people there. You have beaches. You have, but due to the crime, it
Yep.
does scare away some tourists. And hopefully, I mean, I'm really cheering for that guy.
Yeah, I actually want to get down there and
Yeah, same
do
here.
some boots on the ground stuff because there's definitely going to be some announcements soon, and I almost want to be there in El Salvador because they announced sort of the Bitcoin residency in Bitcoin
Right.
City, but they didn't announce the details, and it's not like an open program yet. The high level knowledge we have is that there might be a residency for 3 Bitcoin or somewhere
Awesome.
thereabouts, or you buy like bonds equivalent to 3 Bitcoin.
Hmm.
But the details haven't been unveiled really. It hasn't been launched, but I think it's going to be really soon, that announcement. And so I'm almost like, it would be kind of sick to get down there, be one of the first people in line, put the Bitcoin down, get the residency, and just like, I don't know. And just, so I think it'd be cool to be there for that. I think for some people that could be a valid strategy. Um, but also it would be such a mind fuck to be there
Mhm.
and, use Bitcoin for transactions and
Absolutely.
go to meetups and just sort of like see, with this sort of like futuristic, society could look like.
Exactly. And it's amazing because now, listen, we're discussing El Salvador. Before Naib took power, whenever anyone mentioned El Salvador, it was about MS-13 or get
The murder
violence,
rate. Yeah.
or I mean, they do have good coffee, so let's give props to that.
Yep.
And we're kind of changing the conversation, and the fact that now people talk about investing in El Salvador, make it the
Hmm.
crypto capital of Latin America. Why not? I mean, it's
We live in an interesting time where more
mhm.
people want to move to El Salvador than want to move to Canada or Australia right now.
That's an interesting point, huh? If they can
Like,
attract the crypto crowd, wow, it's gonna turn that country around.
and so, have you heard about the Canadian Freedom Convoy,
Oh, is that the truckers?
the trucker
Yeah,
movement?
yeah. Oh, yeah. It's
So it's actually today. I
really
normally wouldn't even bring it up, but it's today. And so actually this morning, here in Playa del Carmen in Mexico, we had like a Canadian freedom rally here in Mexico, and they're having them all over the world. So we had about 100 strong people out in the park. We took pictures. We had big Canadian flags and stuff like
that's
that.
awesome.
You know,
That's awesome.
big signs saying like freedom. We support our truckers. Blah blah blah. So
That is
I,
great.
I was actually literally just at that this morning, and I was like, okay, guys, I gotta go record the podcast. Um, and so, yeah, just I don't know what my segue was there, but so I mean, I think it's interesting. I think there is overlap in terms of it's a movement that's unveiling and finally a little bit of hope for Canada.
Yeah, I mean, things in the states. It's weird how the whole shutdown in the states happened. I live in Florida, and our
Hmm.
governor was saying that we're not shutting down. We're going to keep it going. And in the beginning, he took a lot of criticism, but it turned out to be the right decision because New York City shut down really bad. And what happened? All those people moved to Miami. Miami is growing at an exponential rate,
Yep.
and it's because we're probably one of the most business friendly places to be.
Hmm. And
And
freedom
for
friendly.
all the gringos that are listening to your podcast, Miami by far is the most Latin city and bilingual place to be in the states.
Yep.
Like if you don't want to move to Latin America, I tell them just come to Miami. It's close to the same thing. I mean, you have American technology and efficiency here, but you have the culture here, and like I think I told you in a text conversation we had. I probably spent half the day speaking in Spanish here.
Right.
So go figure, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you'll get your order taken quicker, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And this is the financial capital of Latin America in a way, because all the banks from
It
Brazil,
is.
Argentina, they'll have branches here. It's
Yep.
their media companies are here. Telemundo's here. Univision is here. So we're
Yeah, it's
all
funny. I mean, Miami was basically not even an American city 5 years ago. It was basically a Latin city. Normal Americans, like basically, there was no jobs. There was no jobs for someone to live there. You could only really move to Miami once if you had independent income or
right.
if you like were already rich, because it was one of the basically lowest paying cities in the country,
Sure.
especially relative to the cost of living.
Oh,
Where
absolutely.
you'd be lucky to get like a 50K job in Miami in a call center. There was just no jobs. There's like no factories or anything
No,
or like high level. There was no tech, and Miami but it was always sort of the Latin American business capital because it was a place where people from all over the Americas and the Caribbean, from those,
mhm,
24 countries, could get together on sort of a neutral ground. And, obviously it's always been easy to open an American LLC, and they could do business there because your options were basically the U.S. or I guess Panama,
right.
and or one of the Caribbean islands, which wasn't really accessible for most people.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, Miami has always been the spot. Now, with the new mayor, they've embraced freedom. They've embraced Bitcoin. They've embraced tech. They've said, what can we do to help to bring more and
Right.
more people here? And now, finally, people from California are finally fed up. They're moving to Miami. People from the Northeast are fed up with the snow. And finally, there's sort of enough momentum in Miami where it makes sense as a destination. And basically, the entire United States is now just like, are we going to Texas or are we going to Florida?
Pretty much, you nailed it. That's pretty much how it is. Yeah, where it's one or the other. Because what New York did in its shutdown, it was draconian.
Hmm.
And listen, no one wants to get sick. Just to get very personal, I had COVID. It
Hmm.
wasn't fun, but you got through it, and that's it. And so now I have the antibodies. I was going to get vaxxed, but you can't to stop the whole economy for this. Where well, we have the flu is still running around. I mean, it's just didn't make sense to me. But I'm glad. I mean, out of all the cities, I think Miami handled it reasonably well compared to New York City, Los
Hmm.
Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle.
And how long have you lived in Miami?
I have been here since 2003.
Oh, shit.
So yeah, I've been here a while. I actually got married here. I got divorced here. So I've had a full life here almost.
Yeah, you're a pioneer.
Yeah.
Been there a long time. And yeah, I feel like you could do no-go zones in Miami and make a whole season out of that. You go to Hialeah. There's a million kind of like
Wow, I'm surprised you know about Hialeah.
cool cutty spots. Yeah, I spent some time in Miami. I've spent maybe like 3 months in total in Miami, like doing digital nomad stuff.
Okay.
Um, I I'm from Canada, but I'm set up in the States now. And when
Okay.
I was originally looking at where should I set up, I wanted to set up in Florida, but there was just like one or two technicalities where it was difficult to sort of get like a like a PO box type mailbox, and sort of like get set up there without fully living there. And but Texas actually was more welcoming to that, and Texas made it easier to get driver's license and
Okay.
bank accounts and stuff like that, just slightly. So I personally went like a Texas route, but I mean either way, I mean it's definitely funny how I think the U.S. is getting more and more Latinized. Really, I mean, most people don't realize that literally like 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 Americans speak Spanish. Like it's
Yep.
60 million plus people, which is probably a low count. So at least 60 million plus people already makes it, I guess, the number two Spanish speaking country in the world after Mexico.
I totally believe you. Like I said earlier, you can literally spend the day here speaking nothing but Spanish.
Mhm.
if you stay in certain areas, of course. But
There are people who spend their whole lives in Miami and never learn English.
yes, you are correct. I always joke that for people that come here from, let's say, pick your country, that's Spanish speaking country, the worst place to learn English is Miami because everybody speaks it. And I mean, everybody speaks Spanish. So if you're struggling to say a phrase, just say it in Spanish, they'll understand you. And, or even green, me being American born, I mean, I don't have a Spanish last name, so I kind of fool people,
Mm.
having a European last name. And they realize, oh, you do speak Spanish. I go, yes, I do. And plus the stereotype of, Peruvians being, very dark and squat looking, and I'm not. So it's that's the stereotype that when we found out I'm half Peruvian, we're like, really, I never would have imagined that. I get that a
And
lot.
I guess for anyone listening that doesn't have uh, a conversational grasp of Spanish yet, um, honestly, I just think as an American, it's like an incredibly useful skill for Americans to speak Spanish. I think it's an absolute superpower in America, not just in Miami, but I think it's use. You could be dropped in any city in the United States, and it's going to make your experience better, and it's going to make it easier to make friends, and it'll just generally be a superpower. I mean, what's it like for you speaking Spanish in Miami? Does it make your life easier? What's sort of your general thoughts on um, you know uh, the benefit of speaking Spanish in the US?
Oh, it's a huge benefit. Whether it's ordering a meal at a restaurant, dating, it's definitely because when you're American here, you go out to pick any nightlife place. Chances are, at least half the females there are going to be from Colombia, Venezuela, Peru, what have you, and their English sometimes isn't the best. But if you can break the ice and tell them you speak Spanish, and then they always fascinated, like, wow, but your name, what you don't have a Spanish name. How did you learn Spanish? And then it's like, oh well, I explain my background. They just find it interesting. But
Yeah, I remember maybe like 5 years ago, I was in Miami, and it was before I kind of started my Spanish speaking journey, before I started my Latin
mhm,
life,
right,
my personal Latin life. The blog had been around with the OG Vance, the previous owner. But I remember I was in a nightclub in South Beach, and I went up to like some super hot girl, and
sure.
I was like, "Hey, like, where are you from?" And she was like, "Cuba." And I was like, "What? Cuba?" I'm like, "What?" "Oh, Cuba." And I and I got blown out. I got blown out. That
Yeah.
conversation was over. Uh,
Speaking of Cuba, have you ever been?
I have not, but
Okay.
I have some concerns about. It would be difficult for me to work as a digital nomad and work
Oh
online
God,
and
yeah.
have access to Google and all my stuff without
Mhm.
using a VPN. That being said, we're actually probably launching a series of city guides on Cuba on mylatinlife.com. We have the big three right now: Havana, Santa Clara, and Santiago. We have city guides for. Um, but I think I'm trying to get like every city in Cuba done and have like city guides for like 12 cities in Cuba, because Cuba is like actually enormous. It's
It
like
is. It
actually an
is.
enormous island. It's got huge diversity, and there's actually a lot of cities with over 100,000 people. There's probably like 15 cities with over 100,000 people, which is a pretty sizable city. They
Yeah.
all have like slightly different vibes,
Mhm.
and I think these like smaller towns in Cuba are actually super epic, because I know they have really well preserved colonial buildings,
Yes.
and you're gonna have like an awesome, authentic experience, and get the salsa as you referred to earlier.
Correct. I've been twice, and I would like to go again to film because it's considered Cuba is not the easiest country for that Westerners go to because the whole communism thing and the
Hmm.
tech. You said like there's no internet there practically, and it's super regulated with the police everywhere. But it is a fascinating place. I hope one day they get taste freedom. I'm for. I'm really not a big fan of communism. I'm kind of anti. I'm capitalist all the way, but it's for the people there to to decide. Hopefully, one day the people will get a bigger voice in the government instead of living under this totalitarian regime. But I have
Yeah,
been.
I do. I do. I think you'll find sort of that consistent theme where on the ground it actually is more free, more normal. People are enjoying their lives. They're going for
Yeah,
ice cream,
sure.
along the boardwalk and all that. Um, I know some people that like maybe that I know some people in Cuba basically, and I see the
Mhm.
Instagram stories and they're just doing normal stuff. So it
Sure.
is. It's just you can just go to a beach club and have a rum and coke and chill,
Sure.
and it's not like some depressing communism.
No,
So
it's. I guess because one thing about also being in Miami is that there's so many Cuban exiles here, and all you hear
mhm.
is all these horror stories. How
The
I was
boat or
treated.
whatever.
Yeah, and like God, you hear the stories like in Cuba, my uncle was detained because he criticized the government, and he was. You hear so many horrible stories, and like, oh my God, it's such a that's no way to live. But I mean, I do hope they get freedom one day. I really do because I think everybody deserves to live in freedom. That's just personal view of mine. But I'm
Definitely.
not a big fan of intervention either. If they're going to do it, let it happen organically, not by having like our military go in and make changes. Because I've seen the effects of that in Iraq, and not to change the topic, but you see what happened in Libya. When you have these interventions, it usually backfires on you. So it's better that it happens on its own.
I
That's
agree.
just my own little spin on it.
Yeah, have you read Confessions of an Economic Hitman, the book?
No, I haven't.
It's a book about a guy who worked for, I believe, the World Bank or the IMF, and he sort of explains sort of the sort of like the military industrial complex there about how you go to a country, you create some fancy report saying we need infrastructure, we need bridges, we need ports, we need just random infrastructure that requires debt, and then
Got
to
it.
build it. And it's all good because, jobs, economy, blah, blah, blah. But then where are they going to get this debt from? And they have to get the debt from the World Bank or the IMF or a couple of these interdevelopment bank organizations. And then once you take the debt from these organizations, then you're pretty much at their beck and call because they can cancel the next tranche of the debt or raise the interest rates or just really mess with your country's sovereign credit rating, and then you're just completely, it's sort of like debt based capitalism, or debt based what's the word, political outreach. And that's like a way that we've sort of like been able to economically control Latin America and most of the world really. And it's a fascinating book that has relevance in Latin America, but also in the Middle East and other areas.
Sure, I definitely got to check that out. I'll definitely next long flight. It sounds like a good some good reading material.
Yeah, yeah, it was a bestseller. Like, there's mad copies out there. Um, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. All right, we'll start wrapping up. We did hit the hour mark.
Okay,
I thought maybe rapid fire, name a bunch of places that would be cool to do a no go zone in Latin
sure.
America. This is going to be a bit of a freestyle here. I was thinking it would be cool to do the Darien Gap from
Yes,
Panama to Colombia,
yes.
and sort of like get in there in the mud, seeing guys, traversing one way or the other. I thought another cool one would be, I've been learning about at the border of Mexico and Guatemala in Chiapas. There's a
Okay.
town that
Yep.
starts with T, and there's all these immigrants from Africa and all over the world basically, and they're basically on their way to the U.S. to seek asylum, and they sort of get held up in Mexico, and Mexico sort of weirdly like formalizes them and like gives them like an ID card so that they can like traverse Mexico as refugees on their way to the US. It's very weird. There's some journalists that are covering this. So that's another one
Okay.
in
What's the name
Chiapas,
of the town
Mexico.
though? Chiapas. Okay, I know Chiapas, but
Um,
I
yeah,
gotta look
it's
that
it's
up.
at
Yeah.
Just give me a sec here. I can pull it up. Uh, Tapachula.
Tapachula. Okay, I'm writing that down.
Tapachula.
Cool. That's definitely food for thought.
Hmm. Another one would be, I mean, there's definitely like there's like a cartel war going on in Mexico where Guanajuato seems to be one of the ground zeros of it. So in Celaya, and kind of all through Guanajuato, there's like crazy stuff going on right now. And I think Mexico's definitely been filmed a lot by people. Like, there's definitely been guys that have filmed northern Mexico and the
Right.
vibe and the whole like narco culture of northern Mexico.
Yeah.
But I've also always been interested in some of the places like Chilpancingo, which is the capital of Guerrero, which is sort of like a dangerous city, but the capital of a state with a lot of history and culture, and then sort of the dynamic of like a place with hundreds of years, thousands of years of culture, but then also um, sort of like modern tension, I guess. Um, where else? I think northern Brazil,
Right. I think
specifically.
Salvador around there.
Salvador would be a good one for sure. I was thinking even more the north of Brazil,
Okay.
Belém, Belem,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I've heard
and
of it.
and São Luís as well. São Luís is in the state of Maranhão, and the state of Maranhão is really interesting. They have the best preserved Portuguese colonial buildings going back 400 plus years, but it's also like the poorest state in Brazil. But they have amazing nature, but it's like super like Africa level poor, but like amazing culture and stuff like that. And it's like a crazy mix of like danger, but vibrant positive energy, but like extreme danger.
Nice. I just wrote it
um,
down. So
so I think northern Brazil, I've always wanted to go to. So if anyone else goes, that's cool. And then I think for you personally, I think you should really do some stuff in Peru and sort of maybe
absolutely,
do some like discovering of your roots. Go to like Lima's insane. It's like a 10 million person city
it is. It's huge.
that most people only know Miraflores and Barranco, but there's a whole city, and I think you could go into some of those more, um, what's the word, like normal neighborhoods and
Right. Where it's more blue collar.
yeah, blue collar neighborhoods, and get that real Lima experience. And I bet it's totally different.
Oh, absolutely.
The
Callao is
experience
like the
there.
big port there. That's the.
Hmm.
I heard it's a little rough and tumble there. That's how it's
Hmm.
been described to me.
Yeah, so there's just a couple. I mean, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana, has that's the place where most experienced travelers never make it.
Right. Yes.
So like Suriname and Guyana would be like super cool as well. Um, yeah, so those are kind of the big ones I'm thinking. I think
Yeah, I think one Caribbean place that's definitely a no-go zone. Haiti.
yeah, definitely.
That's it's got an interesting story there.
And it's gotten worse, right, because of
Yeah, not
the
worse.
recent
The president that's got yeah, he got
thing.
killed. He got killed on the job, which is God. I mean, we shouldn't be laughing. It's just insane what's going on there.
It is
I think
insane.
the president is safe there.
Yeah, that would definitely be a crazy one. That would be like extremely dangerous. My God.
Yeah, yeah. I have
So
to. I would definitely need a fixer there. Definitely.
yeah, so I think Latin America could potentially be a area of expansion for your brand. If you do, obviously, My Latin Life will be here to support and promote any content that you put out from there, and maybe even catch you somewhere along the way.
Absolutely, definitely. And you're in Playa del Carmen, I think I heard you say. That's a
Yeah,
cool. You're
at
in a
the
good
moment.
area. You're in a good area. I was there about 4 years ago for a wedding,
Hmm.
and one of my cousins had a destination wedding there, and I had a blast. I had a great time there.
Definitely. Yeah, Playa's good. Playa's good. It's very comfortable, walking city, walk to the beach,
Yeah,
lots of digital nomads, enough Canadians to hold a freedom rally this morning.
that's
So
cool. And it's not as commercial as Cancun, for example. A little more laid back, which I like. Cancun's nice. I've been there too. It's not bad, but it tends to get more of the frat crowd, the spring break type, and I'm a little over that by now at this point in my life.
I like Playa a lot.
Yeah.
And then do you plan on going back to the Middle East at all?
Actually, in March, I'm going to Iraqi Kurdistan.
Oh shoot.
Yeah, so I'm going back in March. That'll probably be the last Middle Eastern episode for a while because I do need to branch out more. I need to go to film in Latin America, for example, or even
Africa.
go to Africa. Somalia would be Somaliland would be a good place, or I mean, anywhere in West Africa you can go there too. Whether it's maybe not Senegal, but like Guinea-Bissau, Liberia would be a good one. Places like
Yeah.
that would definitely, or even going back to Asia, Bangladesh, something like that would be pretty eye
Yeah.
opening.
I would love to see like the Sahel countries, which is like
Yes,
Mali, Niger, Chad, Burkina Faso. That stuff will be
absolutely.
crazy.
That would be good. Yeah, it's like I said. Hopefully, the series will keep growing, where it can get to the point where I can say adios to my day job and just do this full time, and
That'll be cool.
that'll be awesome.
Yeah, so I should have asked you this way. I mean, what are your plans for 2022 for Mike No Go Zones? What can we sort of expect on the horizon? Iraqi
Oh
Kurdistan.
well, Kurdistan's the next. It's going to be the next episode. After that, I'm definitely looking into maybe either Bogota or somewhere else in Latin America. Tell you what, when I get ready to make that announcement, I'll do it on your website. How's that?
Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely. We can definitely do something like that.
Yeah, I'll announce it there. It's just a matter of finding, getting time off and all that. That's the my big challenge. But
So you'll be going up to Erbil and Mosul, probably?
Mosul is still is actually Iraq proper.
Hmm.
I can go there because to get the visa for Americans to get the visa, we get it on arrival.
Hmm.
Mosul would be a nice side trip, but I'm gonna pretty much concentrate on the Kurdish area, like Dohuk, Erbil,
Dahuk.
Suleimaniye,
Okay.
those three cities. Just go back and forth around there.
That'll be
And
good fun.
yeah, and there's a town there I want to definitely hit up. It's called Lalish. It's I don't know if you ever heard of these people. They're called the Yazidis. They're like a minority religion in Iraq, and there's only 200,000 of them left on the planet,
Hmm.
and that's a tiny. You can figure that you can fill up two football stadiums with that amount of people, and their holy city is called Lalish. It's like their Vatican or their Mecca, if you want to say it. And I definitely want to. It's a town I definitely want to check out because these people, they were hit pretty hard when ISIS came through there. They were a lot of the men were killed, and a lot of them were captured into sexual slavery. Again, sorry to bum people out with this, but it's what happened, and it's a community that took a lot of hits and suffered a lot. So I would definitely want to. There's some kind of memorial that I can lay some flowers on. These people definitely deserve it. So definitely,
Yeah,
it's a time
I
I
think
want to
the
hit up.
culture of the Middle East is fascinating, and I think people would be surprised to know how many um, small, sort of endangered languages and
Oh
cultures
yeah,
there are there that
hmm,
coexist together,
absolutely.
and ethnic groups and stuff like that. It's actually really fascinating. I wish
Yeah,
I could have spent more time in this episode on it, but I wanted to sort of keep things a little bit Latin America centric.
I understand.
Um, Maybe for like a last little value add thing for anyone still listening would just be to talk a bit about gear. So, what kind of gear are you bringing when you do these trips? Let's say you go to Kurdistan. What are you doing for like a phone plan? Are you packing sort of like backpack only, or do you have like luggage? Or just bring us through a couple of your like gear tips.
Well, I definitely bring my laptop. The camera equipment that I use is GoPro,
Hmm.
and I have the little stand. I also have the boom mic to help record the audio, and I try to pack light. I just bring like one little suitcase, enough clean underwear to last, toothbrush, things like that. Just in case I go to somewhere any or fancy or formal, I will bring like a long sleeve black shirt so I can dress up if I have to. If we go
Yep.
to a night spot or whatever. Mostly jeans. Don't bring too much. Comfortable shoes, of course, to walk around. And again, for if there's a fancy night on the town, bring one pair of black shoes. And yeah, this is, my camera equipment. My as far cell phone. I buy a local SIM card It's pretty easy to find in
Hmm.
any country to go to. And believe it or not, most restaurants and cafes wherever you go has Wi-Fi. So you just ask them for the local Wi-Fi password, and boom, down. Get on WhatsApp. You can send your emails. You can catch up on all your work.
And
So
in your experience, like with the SIM cards that you'd get in the Middle East, did they have a lot of data and you would just tether your phone to your computer and then work off the SIM card data?
a decent amount. I mean, definitely enough for a week.
Hmm.
And yeah, I've done that, but mostly I've just used the Wi-Fi either in the hotel or if I go out to eat, if I hit up a place for lunch.
Yeah, because the big thing is like uploading footage to the cloud and just make sure that
It
you have
is right. It
backups.
doesn't just in case it gets lost.
Yeah.
But yeah, chances are there's going to be like one thing. The reason I like Lebanon too is that literally there's a Starbucks in every corner.
Hmm.
So they usually have the best Wi-Fi in Beirut, and I would go there a lot. Just, I mean, I hate to be that American guy that goes to American franchises abroad, but for tech reasons, I'd get a coffee there just to check up on my emails and catch up on work. And
No, they're providing a good service.
yeah,
Quick question about the GoPros. I have one as well. I've done some vlog stuff as well. I This is weird, but I almost find that the very default out of the box standard setting, I can't beat it. Like I've played around with the settings. I've done, like the landscape and this and that, different whatever. And I always just find that the default preset better. Do you have any specific settings that you use when you vlog?
no, just like you said, the default settings. It works. I've been using it from day one, and it's been that way since. I haven't made any
Default
changes.
settings, wide
Yep,
1080p.
right. And it's been working so far. I always go by the adage: if it's not broke, don't fix it. It's been working so far.
Definitely, man. Yeah, thanks for that. So yeah, so again, obviously Mike's channel is Mike No Go Zones. No Go Zones is one word,
Correct.
NoGoZones. Anything that you want to shout out? Do you have any yeah, anything you want to promote?
I guess to the original Vance for starting my Latin life. To Mark for uh, I say you said him help him collaborating and being the common go between for this.
Hmm.
And another guy on Twitter that I follow a lot too, Jake Nomada. I never met
Yep.
him, but he follows me on Twitter. I follow him, and he's put some really interesting things about Latin America too. And he's posted some
Yeah.
very interesting articles. Have you had him out? He'd make a good guest.
Yeah, I'm trying to get him on. We've hung out, we've partied in Panama and stuff.
Okay.
So he told me once I hit 10 episodes, he'd come on.
Okay. I'm glad I can help you.
Yeah.
Reach that
What do
goal.
you like? What do you like about Jake Nomada? What about his content and stuff?
It's very not politically correct, and let's be honest. I mean, these days and times, you can't say anything without some woke person criticizing you or chasing you for this and that. I mean, it's just we live in such a society now. Dominated by these Karens. I mean, sorry to. We're probably gonna flag in this interview right now just by me mentioning that, but I like that it's no holds barred, very masculine, very manosphere oriented, and
Mm.
just no political correctness, no BS, and tells it like it is. That's what I like about his posts. So yeah, shout out to him. Also, traveling the unknown. He's on YouTube. He's the one that got me to go to Syria,
Hmm.
and my guide in Iraq was it, his name's Bjorn Augustad. But you can find if you watch my Iraq episode, you'll see his Instagram pop up. He was a great guy too. He's a big traveler. And but yeah, let's go back to traveling the
Yeah. Do you
unknown
have
now.
any other influences of your own or recommendations for people that we should all check out? And also, people, any suggestions for who I should speak to on this podcast?
Let's see. Well, Jake Nomada would be good for Latin America. Traveling the unknown. Vaga Bjorn would be a good guy.
Yep.
That's the guy who mentioned VAGA. Bjorn.
I've seen him through Zolo.
Okay. He broke the record. He's the youngest Norwegian to hit up every country in the world. And he had, of course, obviously he's gone through all of Latin America and he spent a lot of time there. So by all means, hit him up if you want to talk about South America. He's been there. He actually
Yeah.
he came through Miami recently and he crashed in my house for a night.
No way.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, "Can I?" I'm like, "Of course you can, bro." I go, "You're my brother. Of course you can stay here." I showed him a little bit of Miami. It was on a Tuesday night, so it wasn't exactly a big night to go out, but I did show him a little bit of Calle Ocho in Miami, Little Havana.
Hmm.
We had fun. We went out for a couple of mojitos.
Unreal, man. Well, I'll have a mojito for you tonight. Hopefully, vice versa. Thanks for coming on. This was definitely a fun one.
Absolutely, and thanks again. And hopefully, we'll be crossing paths one of these days. If I make it down to Mexico, I'll let you know, or any Latin American trips, I'll
Yeah,
be contacting
absolutely.
you.
I'll reach out to my photographer buddy. I know he's been to Iraqi Kurdistan.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch, and best of luck on the travels in 2022.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man.